Hey there, crystal lovers! Ashley here with the Love and Light School of Crystal Therapy, and in this video, I am chatting all about working with crystals to create protective energy for your home. So protection using crystals is something that I get asked about all the time. And although I think in a lot of ways, many of us are kind of preoccupied with this idea of protection and we put a little bit too much emphasis on it. I think if it makes you feel good and it makes you feel safe and it makes you feel like you've done something magically wonderful for the people that live in your home, your pets, yourself, your spouse or partner, your children, brothers, sisters, any extended family, then this is a great thing to do. So we are going to talk a little bit about a grid recipe, a crystal grid recipe for protecting your home. That is the whole focus of this week's blog post and podcast. I've put the link in the description for this video, but rather than following a traditional tabletop style grid that uses sacred geometry to dictate the placement of the crystals, this is a full-scale grid that accompanies the whole entirety of your home. So whether you live in an apartment, you have a freestanding house, anything like that, you can do this grid and just adapt it to your space to make it work. To keep things super simple, in this crystal grid, we are only working with two types of crystals. Sometimes crystal grid recipes get a little bit overly complicated, and I wanted to keep this one really simple. But remember, it's not following sacred geometry, so it's a little bit different than a normal crystal grid. Instead, it's following the shape of your home. So you can do this just around one room in your home. You could adapt this to your office at work as well. You could do it around your entire home or around your property line. So in this grid, we will be working with just two crystals. Like I said, they do not have to be this large. I just picked some big ones so that you can see them really well on screen. We'll be working with black tourmaline for creating energetic boundaries for protection, and also with selenite. And there's a whole video I've done about the satin spar variety of selenite. Yes, I still call it selenite. Yes, it is selenite. If you are uncertain about that, go back and check that video all about selenite. So selenite is the other crystal we'll be working with, and this one is for energetic cleansing, to keep the energy cleansed in your space. So just these two crystals we'll be working with, and at the end of this video, I'll also be showing you some other traditional protective folk charms that I use in my home. So to start, you're going to gather up your black tourmaline and your selenite. So how many pieces do you need for this grid? Well, it depends on your home. You might want to start by just drawing a simple floor plan of your home, kind of like a bird's eye view of the shape of your dwelling. So maybe it's a perfect square or a rectangle. It's really, really easy to do a grid for your space that way. But maybe it has a little more twists and turns to it. I have an example floor plan at the link that I've posted in the description here for this week's blog post that shows you where to place the black tourmaline and the selenite according to your floor plan. But basically, the black tourmaline will go in any corners of the space because these are kind of anchoring that protective boundary. So if you had a rectangular shape to your overall home, then you just place one black tourmaline in each corner. Or if it made a few twists and turns along the way, you'd want to find all of those corners and place a black tourmaline crystal in each. You're basically just creating an outline or energetic boundary of your space with the tourmaline crystals to set that protective energy in place. Now again, you can use any size. It doesn't matter if you're working with tumbled stones or terminated crystals like this one here. Whatever you have on hand is just fine. Then along each wall, and especially over doorways and windows, you'll place a piece of selenite. Again, it doesn't have to be this long. I do like for this the short little selenite blades because they work really, really well for the placement. So think about it, if they're going over doors or windows, Most of us over our doors or windows have some sort of wood trim, and a small little selenite blade or wand sits above that trim really easily. So it's out of the way, but you get perfect placement with your crystals. So over each exterior window and door, you don't have to do this on interior doors in your house, but over each exterior window and door, you'll place a small piece of selenite. If you have a whole entire wall of your house that doesn't have a window or a door, I still do recommend placing a piece of selenite, at least one, along that wall as well. Just one is fine. And again, if you want to see an example of this, head over to the link that I posted in the description for this video, because I show kind of a sample floor plan and where to place these crystals. I've also showed a floor plan example where it's scaled back a bit, because I realize, especially if your house does make a lot of twists and turns and has a lot of angles and corners, this can be a lot of crystals. So you can do it just in the exterior most points to kind of cut down on the number of crystals needed. And then the average floor plan, if it does have a lot of twists and turns, you can usually reduce the number of crystals you need by about half, which is definitely helpful for your pocketbook. So take a look at that link to see an example, but remember, black tourmaline in the corners, selenite over exterior doors and windows, as well as along any walls that don't have windows. And when I say this, I don't just mean in one room, I mean across the length of your entire home. So if you have 2 rooms in a row on one wall and neither of them has an exterior door or window, you still only need one piece of selenite for the full length of that space. The reason that we focus mostly on exterior doors and windows is because, just like whereas the black tourmaline is setting up the kind of energetic perimeter or boundary to protect your space, the selenite, because it's all about cleansing incoming energy, needs to be over those exterior doors or windows, because those are the primary spaces where new energy will be moving into your space. So as the energy passes through where you've placed the selenite, it is cleansed and moves in according to your intention. So as you're placing your crystals, I want you to hold the intention, especially with the black tourmaline. You know, these crystals anchor protective energetic boundaries into my space. With the selenite, these crystals cleanse any energy coming into my space, and hold that intention as you're placing your stones. Then, just like with traditional grid making that does follow sacred geometry, when it comes to this little bit different style of crystal gridding on a larger scale, we need to activate the crystal grid. And grid activation is really just about creating energetic connections or links between all of the crystals in that grid. So, using either a separate selenite wand, or a quartz point, or even your finger if you have nothing else to use, find all the stones in your house. Some people like to start with the northernmost crystal. Point either your finger or your crystal at, or your activation crystal at that first stone, and then walk the perimeter of your space, drawing sort of an energetic line. So visualize a line of energy connecting all of the crystals in that grid. The reason for this is it will energetically link those stones, and that's actually what creates the grid rather than just an assortment of crystals laying around your space. So the thought behind grid activation is that it unifies these crystals, brings them together so that they act a little bit stronger than just the sum of the individual crystal parts. So activation, definitely an important step, as well as really holding that intention as you're placing each crystal. This is a step a lot of people miss. So just 2 simple stones to create this really protective crystal grid for your space. It is really different, than a regular crystal grid that follows sacred geometry. That's a small tabletop style, but you can do this for any space. And you know that you don't have to limit this to protection. You could do a crystal grid of your space for well-being, for serenity, for clarity, whatever is needed. And it's just a really cool way to incorporate crystals around your entire space and enjoy their energy. So I did promise that in addition to talking about this crystal grid recipe, which you can read more about at the link that I posted here that goes over to the Love and Light School blog, I would talk about some other protective things that I do in my own home that are based more on traditional folk charms. And since my heritage is mostly from Britain, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, I like to draw upon my own culture for these protective charms. But I really encourage you to look at your culture and find things that work for you as well, because there's such a rich history of protective charms and different methods of protection across the globe. So I'm going to start with a few things. Now, remember we talked about the idea of black tourmaline as creating a protective boundary. So what can we do to create a protective boundary in our homes? Well, one thing that's very traditional of the British Isles is a rowan wood cross bound with red thread. So these sticks are made of rowan wood. Here in the States, instead of calling it rowan, you may have heard of it as mountain ash. And so this wood is crossed and then woven together or bound with red thread. And these charms are traditionally hung over the front door or near the place where people are predominantly coming in and out. So in my house, that's actually the back door is the door that's used the most, because that's where our driveway goes. So I actually have this over my back door. And I really enjoy it. It makes me feel happy that there's something there that I know that is adding to the energetic protection around my home. So this may be something that you want to try. Then alternatively, you could do something that is a little bit more controversial. So this one right here is actually made of blackthorn. Now, in some traditions, you're never supposed to bring blackthorn into your home because blackthorn is thought to attract mischievous or even malevolent fairies. And so, especially in Irish culture, some things that I've read, and in some parts of Britain, blackthorn wasn't usually brought into the home. However, there are other traditions that do bring blackthorn in for really strong protection, because blackthorn, similar to hawthorn, which you may be familiar with, actually has little spines or thorns on the wood. And so these little spines are similar to what you see in other traditions where sharp objects are used for protection. Sharp objects like nails and things like that are used to keep negative energy at bay. And so the blackthorn is kind of similar to that idea because it has these spiny thorns. It's sometimes said that the energy kind of gets caught in those spines or is driven away by those sharp spines. And when working with a blackthorn crossed twig, then you use black cord to weave them together rather than the traditional red for the hawthorn. And I find this really interesting because hawthorn makes these brilliant red berries that look like tiny little apples, and they have, one of the ways to identify them easily is at the bottom. They have a little star-shaped end where the blossom was. And so there's kind of a little star that is associated with the elements. So earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And so they are thought to be very protective, and that's kind of where rowan or mountain ash gets that that connection with protection. And hawthorn also has red berries, but blackthorn, a little bit different, more used for those spines. So those are two traditional charms that you may work with. Another one is the besom. And remember where we talked about black tourmaline is more about setting that energetic boundary? Well, selenite, we talked about, is more about cleansing the energy that comes in. So a besom or broom, and you can find these just about everywhere this time of year, the good old-fashioned cinnamon broom, right? Some people connect them more with prosperity because cinnamon is very linked to prosperity and abundance. However, the besom or broom, think about what its everyday common use is for. It's for sweeping, right? It's for cleaning. It's for actual cleansing, physical cleansing. Well, it's also a representation of energetic cleansing. So by placing one of these brooms, again, over the door or at the threshold, anywhere there's a threshold or an entrance into and out of your home, can help keep the energy cleansed. So as people enter your home, whether that's your family members, guests, anything like that, it's thought that the energy is kind of cleansed, and it also is thought to push any unwanted energy out of the space, just like you would sweep things right out the door. So that is another folk charm you may want to try. And now for my absolute favorite, and this brings it back around to crystals, but something that is a little bit different. We have the hag stone. The hag stone. It's also called sometimes just a holy stone, but it's known as a hag stone. And you can see here, you can see right through the stone because it has natural holes in it. Sometimes there's just one hole, sometimes there are multiple, but these are found all over the British Isles, and they were used for many things, including protection. And so it's thought that the hagstone could act as kind of a protective talisman. And sometimes you will even see small ones like this one. See, there's the hagstone. There's a red thread, again, bringing in that red cord or thread that I just showed you with the Rowan cross, threaded through the natural hole of the hagstone, and this would be hung in the home for protection as well. And you may have noticed there's also a little key on here. Well, what is that about? The reason this is included is because iron has a traditional history of protection as well. And so things like old iron keys would often be threaded on as well, so that you had both the hagstone and the iron bringing in protective energy. So in terms of modern crystal healing, one of the stones that we often see connected with protection is hematite, right? It's that heavy kind of silvery metallic gray stone, often tumbled. Sometimes you can find it rough or raw, but hematite has a strong modern day connection with protection. And the reason for that is that it is predominantly iron. So that more historical context of carrying iron or bringing iron into a space for protection comes through with hematite, and just as we see it here with this little key. So kind of a fun thing. I hope that this was enjoyable to you today. Remember, yes, we can do protection if it makes us feel good, if it's something that supports us, but don't get too hung up on it. Don't come at it from a place of fear. I think sometimes, when people are exploring different energetic principles like this, they tend to get a little nervous about things or give their power away to something, and that is not what this practice is about. It should be something that feels supportive to you, that feels nurturing to you, but it is important to have those energetic boundaries in place. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out the accompanying blog posts and podcasts, be sure to click the link in the description here, or head over to loveandlightschool.com/listen to check out the most popular episodes of my podcast, as well as find all the places to stream and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, crystal blessings.